1. All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to give a brief answer to the question. Hey, what's the short answer to this whole SRM thing, solar radiation management? To, how do we cool the planet in time? And let me answer this way. Whereas food healers feeding everyone can be implemented locally, very locally, on a very tiny scale, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, street by street, cul-de-sac by cul-de-sac. SRM, by contrast, is a totally the opposite end of the spectrum, in that it must be done at a planetary scale, or it's really not going to make any difference at all, effectively. What I mean by that is we literally need on the order of millions of square miles of reflectivity, okay, of mirrors, basically, located in different parts of the world. And that requires a global effort. It requires for humanity to collectively wake up and do it. And millions of square miles of mirrors. We're talking about, an area of mirrors equivalent to, say, I don't know, 3 southwestern states, like New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, an area of like 3 southwestern states worth of mirrors, right? Or more. And so these could be, as Dr. Yatow at Harvard has proposed, vast arrays of floating mirrors, around the equator, vast arrays of mirrors up in the polar regions, like in the Arctic. And what these will be doing is very simple: reflecting sunlight back into space that otherwise would have landed on dark blue ocean seawater, which absorbs 90% of the sunlight that hits it and is therefore overheating the planet, right? In a nutshell, the overheating of the planet, here's the story. Sunlight hits the earth, gets absorbed by water, by rocks, by sand, by the top of my head, by the purple bandana on the top of Marco's head, by somebody's asphalt roof, you name it, it gets absorbed. So the earth is just absorbing all this sunlight that's landing on it all day, every day. And the earth tries to cool itself down by emitting infrared radiation to go back into space. But there's this blanket of greenhouse gases that's retaining a portion of that escaping infrared radiation, but it's retaining enough of it that it's gradually heating and overheating. That's the greenhouse effect, right? And so there's 2 ways to solve that problem. One is you reduce the greenhouse gases, and the other is that you reduce the heat load from the sun. If I had a dimmer switch on the sun, I would dim it down, but there is no dimmer switch on the sun. The next best thing we can do is erect these vast arrays of mirrors and reflect a portion of that sunlight away, right? Before it gets absorbed by the earth in the first place, right? So that's it in a nutshell. Now, because there's been so much accumulation of greenhouse gases, and because we've been overheating now for a few centuries, we're melting the ice. We're melting the ice on Greenland and the Arctic, Antarctica, glaciers all over the world. And this melting ice, that ice is a natural mirror. So rather than erecting more mirrors, we're actually diminishing the stock of mirrors that we already have, right? And that is accelerating. That's part of the reason this is such a vicious exponential, right? And then the overheating is causing vast areas of the planet to dry out and catch fire, We're turning the planet into giant tinder boxes that are catching fire, and these burning forests are emitting even more greenhouse gases. The Amazon has gone from being a net sequesterer of carbon to a net emitter of carbon, right? So that's the nature of this exponential. It's extremely brutal, it's extremely steep, and it's just getting worse by the day, right? And so, like the house on fire with a bunch of kids up in the attic, either we solve this, either we put out this fire in the next few minutes, or the kids are going to be dead. I mean, it's that freaking urgent at this point. So the salient point is this. We've crashed through so many tipping points now that the only way I know of, having studied this ever since I was a graduate student of hydroclimatology at MIT in the early 90s, in 2021, the only way this engineer knows how to solve this in time is to break out the big guns of solar radiation management and reflect a significant portion of the sunlight that's landing on the Earth back into space before it ever gets absorbed. Mirrors make the difference between absorption and reflection. A photon coming from the sun has two possible destinies when it hits the surface of the Earth. It can either get absorbed or it can get batted away. We need to bat away a really significant fraction, like, on the order of 1 to 2% of these photons, which is not a huge percentage. We're not talking about like 50%. No, 1 or 2, maximum 3%. We need to reflect away in order to cool the planet and save ourselves, right? Now, as we do that, I'm not saying that's the only thing that needs to happen. Food healers needs to happen, right? Everyone going plant-based needs to happen. The stopping of the decimation of the Amazon for animal agriculture needs to happen. But none of those things are going to act as quickly and decisively as SRM. So the two big physical things that need to happen to save life on Earth, we need to feed everyone plant-based foods for all the reasons that we've been talking about, including the liberation of humanity from this all-day monopoly game. And we need to break out the big guns of SRM. We need both those things at this point. One or the other is simply not enough. These are the two halves of the yin-yang whole. Food healers meets SRM. We need both of those, and we need them both ASAP. So that's my short answer. Any questions before I break away for dinner?
That was brilliant.
Great.
And someone copy the notes that I put in the chat, possibly. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm on an iPad, but if you could copy all of the, I kind of did a, I kind of note that I was kind of your like type, whatever you want to call it, typist. I just typed everything that you were saying because it was so amazing that I want to put that in writing. So if we could copy and paste that into like a Word document, we could send that to Jane, because this is really, we need to start telling people this. What you just said is unbelievable. What you said about the ice, I did not realize that ice, I mean, water is reflective, duh. Of course ice is reflective. But you know what? We need to start telling people this, because people, it's like you're telling people something that we already know, because it's 1 + 1 = 2. You're just reminding us, oh, don't you remember about the ice and it reflects? And it's like you were just reminding people. And maybe they won't buy that ticket to take a cruise, because the cruise lines are destroying the oceans, polluting, destroying the ice. Alaska, all those cruise ships going through Alaska to watch the glaciers fall, they're destroying everything by just going in there and taking out everything. Nature is supposed to be left alone. We're not supposed to keep invading it. And that's why we need SRM, because everything that we need is because of our own creation of stupidity, I guess. I don't know, or greed, evil, whatever you want to call it. Like you said, the Monopoly game. How many icebergs does somebody own, basically, at this point? If you think about it, people literally own islands. So this is all about who power owning and stuff. But I want to know the next time you can have a meeting about this, because I want to know, how are we going to get this, you said it's only 2% of the photons that we have to get reflected back. We need to get this done. We need to get, like, these mega billionaires that have all this gazillion dollars need to buy these mirrors right now. I mean, there's so much billions of dollars buying guns that need to buy these mirrors. We could fix this tomorrow. I mean, literally, we could fix this tomorrow. We really could.
Totally. Absolutely.
This is outrageous. I mean, Bill Gates just finally went on the national news, and Jane was so thrilled, and she had a thing about it. He said, we need to go plant-based, blah, blah, blah. So now that Bill Gates said that, we need to talk to Bill Gates about the fucking mirrors, or somebody else, or somebody. Because seriously, this is mirrors thing. What you're saying is the solution. You've got it. We just need to get the mirrors done. I know that sounds so easy, and it really is easy. Unfortunately, it's not easy in this world. I mean, it's probably a lot easier for me to buy a kangaroo right now online than to get this done. Honestly, I could buy a baby kangaroo online right now, unfortunately, instead of getting this mirrors done. Like, I wish I could order these mirrors on Amazon and it would be $1 billion. And I could call my friend who has a billionaire boyfriend and be like, hey, give us $1 billion of your 5.8 billion. And let's get these mirrors up. It only takes a couple billionaires to do this. We all know that. Let's just figure out who those billionaires are.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's not just a matter of, first of all, thank you so much for your passion, Sarah. You're playing such a key role in all of this, both food healers and now really helping us get the clarity on SRM. Unfortunately, it's not just a matter of the money. We also need the international agreements. We basically need a global Marshall Plan, you know, of if not all nations, a majority of the nations getting together and saying, we got to do this. We are doing it. Let's go. I believe that I believe that food healers is really the first major step. But as we do food healers, I think it's actually crucial, just as you're saying, Sarah, that we communicate this clearly as part of our overall platform. That look, food healers is the first step of, you know, ultimately, if it were up to me, a golden triangle: food healers, SRM, and collective intelligence being the vehicle for bringing humanity together so that we can ultimately net out on the other two, right? Collective intelligence is the ultimate speed networking game of getting humanity together so that we can network, talk with each other. And in the process, I guarantee you, we're going to net out on these two vital physical solutions. Collective intelligence is kind of the intellectual, bringing humanity and getting humanity's head screwed on right. But once we get our head screwed on right, poof, we're immediately, you know, going to snap to it and implement these two urgent solutions: food healers and SRM. But it is a triangle. It all fits together, because I think even before collective intelligence, it all starts with food healers, because until we do food healers, we are trapped in this all-day monopoly game of individual hoarding for individual survival. And even the billionaires have their heads completely screwed up. I used to work for Bill Gates, and when I talked with him about feeding everyone, he simply wasn't interested. And now, see, if you go back in time 2 or 3 years ago when Bill Gates was interviewed and asked about climate change, he basically said, look, I'm working on my own set of problems. Somebody else is going to have to take on climate change. Now he's saying that he's taking it on. What he's really doing is carbon sequestration, which is not SRM. And actually, in the short term, as Silas was pointing out at our last Food Healers meeting on Friday evening last week, he said that the carbon sequestration that's been happening like in 2020 with so much of the economy shutting down thanks to COVID, the planet has actually heated up even more, because the dirt, here's the dirty little secret. The dirtiest emissions of fossil fuel burning, notably the old technology, decades old coal burning power plants, those dirtiest emissions are emitting not just gases, but solids, namely sulfates, which effectively are these tiny little mirrors. These particles form these tiny little mirrors up in the sky, which are reflecting sunlight back into space. Every coal burning power plant that you shut down or even put scrubbers on scrubs out the mirrors. So whether you're melting Arctic ice or shutting down coal burning power plants, in both cases, you're removing mirrors from a planet that desperately needs more mirrors, right? It's like a patient who's dying in the emergency room and they say, we need to get this patient more oxygen. But instead of giving him more oxygen, some sinister nurse comes and plugs up their nose and plugs up their mouth, and they get even less oxygen, right? Bill Gates doesn't even have the sign right. He's so screwed up on this topic. But why is he so screwed up? Here's what's going on with Bill Gates. Everything he was talking about, he's saying, well, I'm investing in this, and I'm investing in that, and I'm investing. He's in the business of making money. He's the third richest person on the planet, and his focus is making more money because he's trapped in the damn all-day monopoly game. But he's now investing in things that are also sequestering carbon. But he's totally out to lunch on the urgency of the problem and the urgency of SRM, right? But that's what the game does to you. Just like heroin addiction, it rewires your brain to think more heroin, more heroin. How do I get my next fix, right? The all-day monopoly game, all he can see is dollar signs and more money. So I really think Food Healers is the ultimate starting point to get the golden triangle going of Food Healers, SRM, and collective intelligence. And with that, I got to go to dinner. I'm going to end my sermon here. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow on Food Healers at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time on the Block Party. So I'll publish this video and the last one. Really great to see you all. I'm super grateful to you all. Great to see you, Shankar, Sarah, Christopher, Marco, Alan, and everyone. And look forward to seeing you all.